Everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for being here. Today is a part of a larger political movement that has been in the works for some time. But today we're calling this week the Chicago Workers' Rights Week, and that's something to be celebrated. So welcome to Chicago Workers' Rights Week. Starting next week, the city of Chicago's minimum wage will increase to $16.20. And the One Fair Wage Ordinance, as well as the Paid Time Off Ordinance, both of those will go into effect as well. This has been a long time in the making. In fact, these ordinances are the results of, again, as I said, these larger political movements made up of workers, of course, labor unions, community organizations, businesses. Believe it or not, there are businesses that do believe in dignity for workers. But our faith community, and of course my administration, along with our elected leaders, one of whom has been a real champion for workers' rights for some time, and that's the Alder of the 22nd Ward, Alderman Mike Rodriguez. But what really this moment is about? It's about all workers. And when we say all workers, we mean that. Especially those who have been placed on the margins for a very long time. Historically, when there have been pro-labor policies and initiatives, black and brown workers have not always been included in those policies. And even more specifically, women have certainly not been included in many of the pro-labor policies that have been delivered over the course of decades. But Chicago workers and working families deserve everything that we give them. And it's not just about abolishing the sub-minimum wage. It's about making sure that workers can take days off. How about that concept where they don't have to choose between their paycheck and being a part of a family celebration or being sick? And so these are ongoing efforts that we will continue to address as a city. And I'm grateful that, again, that Chicago is front and center as it relates to delivering on behalf of working people and making it possible for working families to live and afford the city of Chicago and to experience real dignity. And so with that, I'll turn it over to. Okay, thank you. We're turning it over. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you, all of you, for being here for this important discussion about paid time off and this exciting date of July 1st when this law goes into effect. We have a really great panel discussion planned for you. I want to introduce our panelists, of course, distinguished guest, Mayor Johnson, but as well as Alderman Mike Rodriguez, OLS Director Miguel Campos. We're joined by Elena and Miguel from Latino Union of Chicago. And of course, my name again is Sophia Zaman, and I'm with Raise the Floor Alliance. We're a coalition of worker centers that builds power in low-wage industries. And the majority of our membership had a deep stake in this fight. And so we're really proud to say that Chicago soon is going to have the most expansive policy around paid leave. And so I want to kick us off with a discussion. And I'll address the first question here to Mayor Johnson. So can you talk about this issue of paid leave and why it was so important for you to prioritize this issue so early on in your administration?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Look, I have a very fundamental belief in making sure that we have real protection for workers. I often talk about my own personal story of being a part of a very large family, one of 10. And, my father worked extremely hard, and, he was a man of his generation and was not always able to participate in all of our activities simply because he had to make sure that there were plenty of items for us to consume as a family, and I put that mildly, having plenty of items for us to consume. But I wanted to establish right away in my administration, a very clear difference between my administration and previous administrations, that we're going to center the rights of workers in a real meaningful way. And again, as I said before, when you have workers who cannot take time off when they're sick, they can't take time off when a family member needs them, or they just can't take time off to refuel, themselves. I mean, it's something as very simple as being able to have a decent paying job that allows families to take time off to enjoy one another. That was something that I wanted to establish right away in my administration. Thank you.
So, Director Campos, can you give us an overview of what this law does, and what can workers do if after July 1st they're not receiving these benefits?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the question. So to start off with, guaranteed paid time off is doubled in the city. So under our old paid sick leave ordinance, workers were entitled to earn up to 40 hours or 5 days for paid sick leave purposes. Under this new ordinance, now it's 10 days. So it's 5 days of paid leave and 5 days of paid sick leave. The paid leave can be used for any choosing or reason of the employee's choosing. We improved the accrual rates. So now workers are able to earn 1 hour of paid leave and 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 35 hours worked. The law improves our carryover rate. Under our old ordinance, employees or workers were able to carry over up to 20 hours of paid sick leave. Now it's 80 hours. There's a carryover component for the paid leave. So you're able to prepare for future medical emergencies that you may be having. There are payout provisions that are introduced into the ordinance or are coming online on July 1st. And then I would say, most importantly, people have quicker access to their paid leave. Under the old ordinance, you had to wait 6 months to utilize your paid sick leave. Under the current policy or new policy that will start on July 1st, you have access to your paid sick leave within 30 days and the paid leave within 90 days. So we were able to reduce that waiting time in which people can use their time. It's a monumental piece of legislation. There's a lot of additional protections that are involved in it. We're busy providing outreach material if workers want to learn more. We have material available in English and Spanish and Polish and Korean, Mandarin, Tagalog, Thai, Vietnamese. So we're trying to ensure that we are reaching workers in a language that they understand in their native tongue. There's an abundance of resources at our labor standards website, which is chicago.gov/labor standards. We've held webinars. Recordings of them are on our YouTube channel for the department. And then the last part of your question, you asked, how would I file a complaint? So we want to ensure people, one, that you're able to file a complaint anonymously. We will not share the complainant's information without their express written permission. People are able to file a complaint anonymously without even giving their name. They can visit our website, fill out a form, email it to us, fax it to us, send it through mail. People are able to call 311. They can use the Shy 311 mobile app to file a complaint. And I do want to point out that each of our labor protection laws has anti-retaliation provisions in them. So people should not be afraid to file a complaint. It protects the complainant and then anyone else who might be a witness or wants to provide testimony. So it may not be you experiencing a violation of our labor protections, but it might be one of your colleagues. So you're able to file on behalf of them, and then you're able to provide testimony or evidence in support of somebody, and that those anti-retaliation provisions protect the complainant and anyone who's a willing participant in the investigation.
Thank you, Director Campos. So, Mayor Johnson, you often say that Chicago is the greatest freaking city in the world, because it is. In part because this city is the birthplace of the American labor movement. So in that historical context, can you talk about why this paid leave policy is so significant?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, without a doubt, we are truly the greatest freaking city in the world, the city of Chicago. And, this is the city that said, to keep hope alive. It's the city that said, yes, we can, right? And I often talk about, the wonderful speech that Dr. King gave at the AFSCME convention. And I know our AFSCME partners are here. And, but basically the speech culminated with the labor rights movement and the civil rights movement were one of the same. And what he said was that the two combined had incredible potential. And we're seeing the manifestation of that because this paid time off and, abolishing the sub-minimum wage, these are efforts that have been fought not just by the labor movement, but through the lens of, quite frankly, Black liberation, right? And think about it. Now you have a city that has elected someone who is deeply tethered to faith and labor. A Black union organizer is now the mayor of the city of Chicago because of that profound history and rich history in the city of Chicago. And so this is a fight for equity and justice. It's a fight for labor rights, but it's also, again, a fight for civil rights. And the city of Chicago has been at the forefront of these efforts. And now we're really seeing what was prophesied a generation ago, that potential is now upon us. And so that's why, going back to the original question, why we wanted to do it with such immediacy. I'm thinking about the generation that could only dream of this day. It was incumbent upon us to ensure that what was just a dream become a reality. And so Chicago is setting an example for the rest of the world. And those were also words that Dr. King also spoke of, that what we do in Chicago and whatever we do in Chicago has the potential to transform the world. And so that's what we are embarking upon right now.
Absolutely. All right, Chicago.
All right, Chicago.
So, Chairman Rodriguez, can you talk about your personal connection to this issue of paid leave, and what does it mean to you to see this law go into effect soon?
Great question, and I will get there. But I want to start, I'm going to take my time here. I want to start first by recognizing the power in this room, right? I want to recognize that when organized labor and community and grounded elected officials come together, we could change the world, right? And we've done that here in Chicago years ago with the 8-hour work week, or work day, 40-hour work week. And we're doing it this far, sorry, hey. Relax. That's a couple terms from now. Look, and we've done it here in the first year of this administration, creating the most progressive paid time off, paid leave policy in the country. And we did that together. And I want to recognize that. Labor coming together with community organizations, and we made this work. Now, I usually don't do this for fear of leaving people out, but I do want to recognize one person who I met when I submitted this legislation in the previous administration, who wrote this legislation, then joined my staff and is now working with the mayor. Props to Melitza Pagan for all the work that she did on this. That shows talent, right? Everybody wants somebody. You got a really, really, really good one. Yes, relax. That's okay. We got to invest in our people, right? That's all right.
That's right.
But I'm really honored to have been the sponsor of this legislation, be the chair of the Workforce Development Committee with my vice chair, Alderwoman Helu Gutierrez. Props to you. From day one, when she came in, was a champion of this legislation, right? The fact is, I think about how when I was a kid growing up in this great city, every summer, my mother, who was a secretary, then a claims representative in the Social Security Administration, had a union job, would take her 1 week off of work in the summer, and she would take us to the Taste of Chicago, right? We'd go on the boat tour there on the lake during that Taste of Chicago, and we learn every year about the history of our great city and the architecture of our great city. And those memories are with me today. You know, my mother passed about a dozen years ago, or a little bit more than that. And she was a great, great human being. She served in her church. She led the soup kitchen on the west side of Chicago at her church. And like, I was inspired by this great woman to continue on with this labor and community organizing. And it's not lost upon me that that great memory that I had as a child growing up was brought to us by the labor movement and was brought to us by paid leave. And now that choice, that memory, can be given to so many thousands of young people in our great city now that we are offering that paid leave. Families don't have to choose whether they send a kid to school sick or whether they go to work sick. They could take that day off. They don't have to choose whether they go to the meatpacking plant and potentially infect others with COVID or some other disease, because they can now take that day home. And I'm going to say something very briefly in Spanish. Voy a hablar en el idioma de Dios. Ya tenemos 2 semanas libres para todas las familias de la ciudad de Chicago, de que pueden tomar su tiempo, decidir tomar su día con su familia, sin tener decisión de perder su trabajo o perder su sueldo por la razón de que están enfermos o sus hijos están enfermos. Qué bueno que tenemos una ciudad que valore a las familias, a los trabajadores de nuestra gran ciudad. ¿Qué ejemplo vamos a tener para todo el país, para todo el mundo aquí en la ciudad de Chicago por los esfuerzos de nuestra gente de la ciudad de Chicago? Un gran orgullo estar con mis hermanos y hermanas hoy día, y que se va a hacer un beneficio a todo Chicago ya el 1 de julio.
Hold on. No, he didn't say freaking in Spanish. I heard, all right.
It's not a good way to say it.
Okay, all right, fine. Todo mundo, freaking the mundo. Exactly. It does. Yeah. We got to find that word then.
Adrian, I don't think so. All right.
Thank you. So I want to ask the next question of Elena. What does it mean to you as someone who's been working without paid leave to see this law go into effect?
La verdad, me remonta mucho, soy madre soltera por más de 20 años, me da tristeza y alegría, me remonto un poquito al tiempo atrás y la verdad me dan ganas de llorar porque soy madre de 4 hijas, siempre trabajando, pero no podía darme el lujo de pedir un solo día porque no me alcanzaba para pagar mi renta, pagar las cosas de mis hijas. Cuando mis hijas, me da tristeza porque cuando mis hijas iban a la escuela, que se graduaron, todos esos momentos no me lo recompensa nadie. Ellas ya están grandes, ya están trabajando, y esto lo veo más que por mí, por toda la gente trabajadora, porque, bueno, sí, es muy triste haber pasado todo eso. Días que me enfermé 2, 3 días, no tenía derecho a irme a mi casa, los cumpleaños de mis hijas, nunca estuve con ellas. Para mí eso fue muy triste, pero ahora me puedo dar ese gusto de decir, ¿sabes qué? Hoy tengo que llevar a mi hija al doctor, soy madre de una niña autista ahora, me puedo dar ese privilegio con gusto de decir, hoy la tengo que llevar al doctor, ir a la escuela si tengo algo especial, una cita de doctor, una cita de alguna terapia, y pues solamente puedo decir gracias a Chicago, gracias a todos, gracias a toda la gente trabajadora y estoy orgullosa por eso porque se logró algo muy, muy grande para todos nosotros. Gracias.
I'll do my best to paraphrase. Elena is a single mother, a mother of four, and she said that she's both happy but also saddened because when her girls were growing up, she remembers missing graduations, showing up to work sick because she didn't have access to paid time off. But she's also very happy because she now can take the time to take her autistic child to her doctor and to be able to go to those doctor visits. So she is grateful and she wants to thank all of you and thank the working people that have put all of their effort and labor into making this possible.
So Mayor Johnson and Alderman Rodriguez, Mayor Johnson referenced the movement, right, that made this political moment possible. And there's so many groups in this room from worker centers and labor unions who are part of the coalition to help realize this legislation. But we also know there was a lot of opposition. So can you talk about what was the effort like to get this bill across the finish line?
Okay, all right. Okay. Look, I mean, let's go back and acknowledge, whether it's our labor partners, community-based organizations, worker centers, who all played a part in making this possible. The layers of collaboration was essential, to this effort, and it was important for businesses, small and large, to understand and to know the benefit of these policies, right? And, for us, it did require us to do some additional work and some convincing to bring businesses along. Now, in many instances, though, these businesses understood and recognized the value of a strong, high, morale work environment, and that in and of itself is pro-business, and it creates a more stabilized workforce, reduces turnover, it provides a deeper connection with workers with the particular company or corporation or industry that they're attached to. But I think the last thing that I'll say is, even with all of those benefits, this does not happen without the collective work of our entire movement. And that's something that, we should be proud of, but it's also something that other cities and states can look to as a model of how you build a movement that responds to working families. The last thing that I'll say is, I talk a lot about a better, stronger, safer Chicago. That can only be realized through the lenses and experiences of working people. And I believe that businesses understood that. It's just that they have not had a lot of practice and this type of collaborative approach of how a pro-workers agenda is beneficial to business. And now that we have that understanding, all the other pro-workers legislation that we will move, we should get less opposition. Nobody clapped with that. I said we should get less opposition.
I'll carry the theme. I mentioned before the home of the 8-hour workday, 40-hour work week. There was opposition then. And at the end of the day, it's become a cultural norm, not just in our city, but across our country. Minimum wage laws, the same. They faced stiff opposition, but it takes significant commitment to workers' rights and to rights in general. The fact is, the mayor is exactly right. This will be a good thing for business. Retention rates will go up, employee satisfaction will go up, and we will all benefit from this effort. Now, we had some very good dialogue. We had significant changes to our original ordinance, significant changes, and we worked together to come to this final product, forgive me. I'm looking at friends right now that know this was not the exact bill that we wanted, but this was the ordinance that we knew would help working families in the city of Chicago and help all Chicagoans at the end of the day. And we stood very, very proud when about 2/3 of my colleagues and I and the mayor eventually supported this piece of legislation, and where a significant number of businesses also came on board to support this legislation. And look, it wasn't all of them. But I'll tell you something. At the end of the day, I've had folks on the other side who were fighting us who now respect us and now come back to me and say, Mike, we had a decent process, and maybe we didn't get what we wanted, maybe we were opposed at the end of the day, but we respected that process, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And we're going to try and figure out ways to work with business in the future, because we have to. But I am unapologetic that I come from a Teamster father and a federal union worker. I come from a movement on the southwest side of Chicago that was started 40 years ago by a labor and immigrant rights organizer his blood runs through mine at this point, and many of our blood throughout this room. And we are standing on the shoulder of giants, and we will continue to push forward because workers' rights are humans' rights, and because workers' rights lead to a better Chicago and a better country for all of us.
Amen. So I think we have time for one more question, and I'll address it again to you, Mayor Johnson and Alderman Rodriguez, which is, what's next? How do we continue to improve this city for working families?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Look, work has to be dignified. And for a long time in this city, that wasn't happening, and especially for black and brown workers and women workers. And so, there are opportunities for us to see to it that paid time off can transfer within an industry so that people can carry their time off with them, particularly if they are within the same industry. There are better ways in which we can ensure that not only wages and health benefits are aligned completely with our value system. There must be a real concerted and committed effort from our movement to bring business along. And the reason why I say that is because when we think about the opportunity that we have, particularly around healthcare, and that includes mental health care, that there's still a lot to be had and desired in that particular area, if you know where I'm going. And the paid time off, which tends to work within the traditional framework of sick leave or just being able to spend time with your family and take some vacation. But throughout the year, circumstances come up, where the mental health and well-being of workers have not always been centered. And even in our best, even with our best efforts to create work environments that are healthy and strong, that is not the realization that we have today. So it's the ability to transfer time, working with corporations and businesses to think more strategically about healthcare benefits, along with making sure that there are opportunities for our mental health and well-being to be secured in our workspace. That's just the beginning. Don't get me started about childcare and other ways in which we can be far more thoughtful in our workspaces. All right, if you work for the city of Chicago, you can always drop your kids off on the 5th floor. No, I'm not. Maybe I should say that. I don't know. But it's kind of true, though.
There's a lot of kids that go to. You know, in order to look forward, I think we need to look back. It's no coincidence that in the first term, first year of the first term, because you said 5 terms you're going for?
6.
6, okay, got it. I'm not doing 6. Not 5 either. We got one fair wage done, we got paid leave done, but do not forget, we have great leadership at the Office of Labor Standards. We've strengthened the Office of Labor Standards over the year. We've added bilingual workers at the Office of Labor Standards as investigators. I think in every budget, we're going to continue to figure out how our Office of Labor Standards is more representative and more able to do its great work to serve the city of Chicago in populations that need our government's support. We're going to look at populations that are in the underground economy that want to get into the legal realm, particularly some efforts locally in my area that we're looking at strategically about supporting. We're looking at immigrant Black and brown workers that drive us to work and school, that drive us to church, to make sure that there's enhanced safety and enhanced guaranteed paid for workers in those industries. I think we are not done. I think we've gotten a lot done in the first year and a half now, or year and a quarter. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to equal the amount of success that we've had in the first year moving forward, but I'm committed to it. I think we've got a lot of work yet to do. I think there's a plight in immigrant workers. The fact that female workers still get paid at the percentages of their male counterparts in our society is unjust, and we need to approach that as well locally. But look, I'm encouraged by my colleagues, absolutely by the Fifth Floor's commitment to this issue, but I'm most encouraged by the people I see in this room, both labor and community, that will hold us accountable to this work, but that will also be committed to getting things done for workers in the city of Chicago, that again, is great for businesses and all people in the city of Chicago.
Well, thank you again to all of our panelists, especially Elena here for joining us from her busy workday. Thank you to all of you for your leadership. Thank you for you all for your leadership. And I think that's all for today.
Can we give a couple shout outs? Can we do that real quick? Because I know a few folks are in the room. I see the CFL is here. Let's give it up for the CFL. We have Women Employed, Latino Union. Of course, AFSCME is everywhere. And I hope I get this right. A Fire is here. And then, of course, Raise the Floor Alliance for hosting us, right? Thank you all. Thank you.
Panelists, we're going to take one group photo really quick. Okay.